Hi, everybody. I'm Tyson Seburn, and I gave this talk at IATEFL2021 a few weeks ago. And I thought I would do an extra recording of it just for anybody who wasn't able to attend, but also because I wanted to take my time a little bit. My talk is about disruption, and this really is something that goes along with not only LGBTQIA2, but all types of underrepresented, oppressed, or marginalized people. And so I'd like to talk to you today about what that means to disrupt this heteronormative status quo in our ELT materials together. The way I view disruption as an approach or as a concept is really in terms of maybe a metaphor that might be easier to think about. So let's think of a river, like this guy here. And the river is actually a little bit polluted, but this man walking through the river sort of happily, carefree, doesn't seem to really notice the pollution at all. Later, he sort of wakes up a little bit and starts to realize, oh my gosh, there is some pollution in this river. I'm going to try my best to sort of pick it out on my own, one by one by one. That doesn't seem to work too effectively, or at least not entirely effectively. I mean, he's making a certain impact, but not certainly as much as he could if he involved more people. Now, of course, to involve more people, you have to get them to first care about it, and you actually have to get them to even acknowledge that there is a problem. So that is really the next step, isn't it? And so a third path on this disruption approach would be to get as many people involved as possible, right? To have them all go through the river and trying to pick up things together, kind of a community approach. Ultimately, the source of the pollution isn't going to go away by us picking things out as a community or individually. So we may need to actually go right to the source and make some sort of systemic change. And if we do that, then maybe the pollution itself will just go away. So like pollution in a river, there's a problem in our ELT materials in terms of inclusion. And so each one of these stages or steps is one way of improving the situation. And so today in this talk, I'm going to be talking primarily about step C. But first, I think we need to take a look at step B in order to see where we have come from so far. A long, long time ago, at an IATEFL far, far away, I gave a talk, which started kind of everything in terms of me being involved more globally. And so at that talk, I presented this course book, or at least a version of this course book before I had actually finished it. This course book unit, I should say. And shortly after that, I put the course book unit on my website. And what it was my attempt at showing teachers, materials writers, and publishers that there was a different way you could create a coursebook unit that did include LGBTQIA2 people. And in the meantime, I included some different types of people other than just gay people. But I did it through a usualization approach, which was one of the steps on that sort of disruption path that I showed at the beginning with the river. And the point of the usualization approach is largely that we make a wider variety of people appear usually alongside every other type of person and narrative in our ELT materials. And the focus of the materials isn't the sort of uniqueness or specialness of that particular group. It doesn't hide anything necessarily in terms of authentic characteristics, but the frequency at which we include a gay couple or a lesbian couple or transgender people or older people doing interesting things or disabled people, the frequency at which we include these underrepresented groups traditionally increases so much to the point where there is an opportunity to show individual characteristics. So there isn't just one person representing an entire group in that unit because they're the sort of token gay character. However, the focus of the unit isn't really on that characteristic or that character so much. And so this is why it's called a usualization approach. So anyway, let me give you a kind of insight as to what that might look like. One of the activities in the unit was this one. So the first thing that the students would need to do is listen to one person from each of these pairs describe their experiences with balance in their lives. And while they're listening, they would fill out the blue columns, right? So take notes on what that person says helps them in their life with their balance, and take notes about what challenges they face in their lives. And so I want to play a couple of audio clips just so you can hear what they sound like.
Sam's in senior year at uni, so there's a lot of pressure to study. Sometimes it's hard to get together with them. Having said that, they always try to call me every couple of days to talk, and we can talk for hours, which makes me happy.
Here's Levi and Tulip.
My family is very religious, and I'm not. This causes a lot of tension about many things, mostly marriage and kids. Actually, I don't want to get married. I'm happy enough with my little gorgeous puppy Tulip.
Okay, so in this one, you can see the same type of thing. What challenges does this person face? Their family seems to be a particular challenge with regards to pressuring them to get married, and what helps their dog, basically. So there's two examples of the audio. The second task would be then for the students to fill in the green parts, which is for them to make a connection with what is being talked about. And so a simple connection to make is to decide whether or not they also feel stress by these things that are challenges for each of these people. And finally, because this is a language course, of course, we're doing a listening task here, but there is a target language, which is contrast language. So the students then finally would listen for the word or phrase that each person used to show contrast, show these differences. And once they've done all of this and fit out all these charts, then they can compare it with a partner. So I don't know if you caught any of those, but you're not a student and this is not a test. Now, the next page has all of the sort of transcript for each of these characters. So this is what they have said and the students have listened to, so they can check their notes to see how right they were. But in this task, the students then finally need to see the names and connect those with actually what was said. So we'll do Sam and Suzanne because that's one of the ones we all listened to. So alongside all of these are pictures of the different people as well. And so Suzanne said they're in senior year at uni, so there's a lot of pressure. So you might remember that part. Then they said they always try to call me every couple of days to talk. We can talk for hours. It makes me feel a lot better. It makes me feel happy. So that's one task there. To do that is to match them up. And then, of course, they're checking that target language, which is the yellow part. And I don't know if anybody remembers or heard or paid attention, but it was having said that. So having said that is the phrase, in this case, the contrasting phrase that is the target language in this particular scenario. Now, the usualization part that happens here is, again, we're trying to increase the frequency by which underrepresented individuals appear so that we can show individualism. And so the attention isn't necessarily drawn to the fact that we're underrepresented folks or the characteristics in this case. But you'll see with Sam and Suzanne, the pronoun they appears regularly, as a matter of fact. That isn't the target language in this particular case, but it is just something that's regular and usual. And Suzanne is using. So clearly, Sam here is non-binary or a transgender man for example. But again, that isn't the focus in this particular case. So in the audio, was one opportunity to introduce a narrative and to make it more usual. Then we see it in text transcript as well, but we also see in the images. And so if we look at other images that appear in this unit with these couples, we can see a variety of different types of people, but more so in the language. So a usualization approach, as we just took a quick look into it with this coursebook unit, aims to include a wide variety of individuals who don't normally appear in our ELT materials, but are, in fact, people in our societies, including teachers, materials writers, and our learners themselves. And so when any of these types of characters and narratives appear, it can show that we value a wider variety of people, and we're not aspiring to be this type of person that we're not. And so from my perspective and my life growing up, you can trust me in when I say that it is very important to see yourself or people like you represented in order to make yourself feel as though you're not abnormal, I suppose, if you want to call it that, or specifically undervalued in society compared to others. And we do that through the use of audio, texts, and images. Now, we may then think, how can we complement a usualization approach to engage more learner action? And I say this because one sort of missing component of the usualization approach, as I mentioned, is that the focus isn't on the uniqueness or the special experiences of underrepresented folks. And so sometimes it can seem as though a usualization is presenting underrepresented folks as having the same experiences as, the white heteronormative person that often appears. And that simply isn't the case. So I don't think a usualization approach is where we stop. And so when I made that coursebook unit, I never intended for that to be the end goal of an inclusive practices suggestion. It was one component. And so now, if you think about that river that we saw at the beginning, I would say a usualization approach is really that step B, right? Where we're individually trying to find the pollution and make fixes. But we want to include learners and all learners into being more active in terms of improving the pollution level of the river, because more people doing it together obviously is going to make a bigger change. And so how can we do that? How can we complement a usualization approach for more engagement from learners? Well, to do that, I'm going to ask you to think of something first. And that is either take a look at a coursebook unit that you have nearby, or just use your imagination. Think about how a family might appear represented in typical ELT materials that you've seen or you've used.